Hi, everybody. My daughter wants me to go into many of my memoirs, but I don't want to go too deep into a lot of them. I will tell you some of the things I do know and the times that I spent in high school.
Why don't we start with your old neighborhood? Because a lot of people were asking if you remembered them or their grandparents or their parents. So why don't you start with that? Your people in your neighborhood, Carpent
Well, my neighborhood and over on Phillip
on
Street.
Phillip Street.
Yeah, I remember Romy Carpenter and Edith very well. In fact, I worked even for a while after I got out of service. It was Romy down at the old converting plant for the paper mill. And I always enjoyed Romy. I loved to watch him sit on his lawn. Edith would be mowing the lawn and he'd be sucking a beer sitting there in July with his long underwear on. And he'd be sucking his teeth. He always, he was a character. I enjoyed every bit of it. But I do remember the time that he won a lottery down at Krause's bar. And he was and happy as heck there and talking about it. And somebody called up Edith and told her that he'd won I don't know if it was around $100 on a pool. And she came down there, took the money, and walked home. And Romy, he didn't have much to say. Edith was the boss. But Romy was a real character. He loved to have his beer. He enjoyed every bit of it, and was a very good neighbor. Edith was also a very good neighbor, and she did a lot of clothes washing for the floral uh, owners. They brought all the washing because they had their twin daughters and a couple other kids, and so they were pretty busy around the flower shop. And Edith did all the clothes washing for him for years. I'll never forget that yet because it was always. I thought she was a very ambitious lady, and she did the mowing the lawn. She did the show. Romy did a little beer drinking. He was very, and when we had a beer depot there at our house after the war was over, my dad wasn't in the grocery business. He worked in the paper mill also, but we had a little beer depot and we rented boats and motors, and we sold beer in there. And Edith was glad to see where he was. He was right next to home and he could have his beer. And a lot of the old timers did, and especially on Sunday when the bars were still closed until noon. That was a law in the city of Rhinelander. The bars on Sunday couldn't open until noon, so they would all come in and sit in our little beer depot, which you were not supposed to drink on the premises. But nobody knew, or if they did know, they didn't say anything. And the wives were all happy because they were close to home doing their beer drinking. And then if the police came in, if they did just for, some of our neighbors were police, they had empty beer cases sitting there. They would drop the bottles into the beer case, and they would think they were just empty bottles. Well, supposedly thought that. I do believe they didn't really give a hoot what they were doing, as long as there was no problems.
And then what about some other neighbors? I heard there was a guy named Spot you knew.
Spot lived on Wisconsin Avenue. He was a pipe fitter in the paper mill, and I enjoyed Spots very much. He liked to we all BS'd, and I was a good friend of some of the pipe fitters, Poochie Cheslock for one, and there was quite a few. And Spots liked his beer. He would, you drive by his home, and he'd be sitting on the front steps with a case or a half a case, and he'd sit there and drink his beer. Very good neighbor. I enjoyed Spots. Never no trouble or anything like that I never knew of.
Because, yeah, his daughter said she wanted to know the good, the bad, and the ugly, so.
There was nothing bad about Fox. I just thought he was, I never had to live with him, so how would I know anymore?
Did you know the Webster family?
Oh, I know Harris Webster, yes. Yeah, he works in the mill. I know one of his sons yet, that I see him in church on Sundays. Well, when I was going, I haven't been there ever since this coronavirus has hit the fields. I don't want to catch it myself, and I know, yeah, I can't. What was that?
Wally?
Wally, yeah, Wally Webster, yeah, Wally, yeah. And then there was another Webster family that was, his name was Bob. I think he joined the service when I was still in high school, but he was just a cousin to the boys. So, but other than that, I knew the Webco girls and Wally, and yeah, they were a great family.
You have anybody other neighbors that you remember growing
I
up?
remember Art Supert used to be next to Romy Carpenter's house, that little car. But I never. They had a daughter that was probably a couple years younger than I am, but I don't. They moved away shortly, and I was probably 6 or 7 years old. So,
Mm.
but then actually the last neighbor that lived there was. Oh, I gotta think of his name. Jurowski, Ray Jurowski. And Ray passed away not too long ago. He was one of the 4 boys that played hockey for the Rhinelander Hornets. There was Walt and Ray and Joe and Ed. And they were quite a foursome. The big boys could skate, and Rhinelander had a heck of a team those days.
Wasn't there Gracie that you lived by too?
Oh, Gracie Rosnick lived across the street in that big house on Phillip Street. And her dad, at that time, run the store, or owned the store at Marshall Wells hardware store. Gracie was a beautiful girl, and I went to school with her. And yeah, we all had a crush on Gracie, but she always considered me as her brother. And I called her up last April 6th. It was her birthday. She caught up to me. She was 85 years old, and I said, "Your big brother is calling you to wish you a happy birthday." Yeah, she was quite a beautiful girl, and everybody in the neighborhood or all through the school was crazy about Gracie, but she was a swell, a real nice gal, and nothing. We take her swimming up in our little beach that we had. We call it. We didn't wear swimsuits most of the time, but when Gracie came swimming, we all had to put swimsuits on.
Okay, well that's good. Didn't need to know that detail, but anyway, okay. Well, that's about the old neighborhood. We'll get on to some other topics. Okay. Let's see here. I will pause for now, and then we will regroup.